When you study tectonic plates, there is this understanding that pressure builds up incredibly slowly.
Right. Over years and years.
Exactly. For decades, the ground beneath you feels completely solid. I mean, you walk on it every day, entirely trusting it.
It just feels permanent, like the landscape is totally set in stone.
Yeah, but underneath, friction is mounting. And then, in just a fraction of a second, the plates slip, the earth fractures, and everything you thought was permanent is suddenly completely rearranged.
Which is terrifying, but also kind of fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. And looking at the stack of match reports, tactical analyses, and frankly, these breaking news dispatches on our desk today, that sudden release of impossible tension is exactly what is happening in English football right now.
Yeah, it really is a seismic shift.
It's unbelievable. I mean, we are plunging into the climax of the 2025-2026 Premier League season. We've got a title race resting on an absolute knife's edge and landscape-altering managerial exits at two of the biggest clubs on the planet.
It's the kind of week we're going to be talking about for decades.
For sure. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because history is literally being made right before our eyes. And, for anyone listening who wants to quickly cut through the noise, we need to understand the mechanics of how these dynasties are actually shifting.
Right. We're looking at a week that will define the sport for the next 10 years. And to understand the shockwaves, you really have to start at the epicenter.
Which brings us to May 18th, 2026, the Emirates Stadium, Arsenal versus Burnley.
What a match.
Man, tense doesn't even begin to cover it. Arsenal is chasing their first Premier League title in 22 years. Dating all the way back to the 2004 Invincibles.
The pressure in that stadium must have been suffocating.
Oh, it was like holding your breath underwater. They managed to scrape a 1-0 victory, which puts them just one win away from the trophy. But looking at the tactical breakdown of this match, this was not some triumphant march. It looked agonizing.
Yeah, it was a brutal test of nerve. Arsenal held overwhelming possession. And, their keeper, David Raya, he didn't have to make a single save against Burnley. Not one.
That is wild. 0 saves.
Right. But when you are only up 1-0 against a team deploying a deep, compact defensive formation, what we call a low block, the math is just terrifying.
Because Burnley put all 11 men behind the ball, right?
Exactly. They just choke the space. Arsenal's dominating the ball, but they cannot find that second goal to kill the game. And you're just sitting there thinking, one lucky deflection on a counterattack and 2 decades of waiting just vanishes.
Which is terrifying. And that brings us to the guy who actually scored that lone goal, Kai Havertz.
A huge moment for him.
A 37th minute header off a Bukayo Saka corner. But wait, I have to push back on this lineup choice for a second, because Havertz has had a completely injury-ravaged season.
Oh, he's barely played.
Right. This was only his second league goal of the entire campaign. And Mikel Arteta chose to bench his main striker, Victor Gyökeres, to start a completely cold Havertz in literally the most high-pressure game of the year.
Yeah.
That seems completely reckless to me.
Well, on paper it looks like a massive gamble. But tactically, Arteta was actually exploiting a very specific weakness in Burnley's low block.
Okay, how so?
So Gyökeres is brilliant at running into open space behind a defense, right? But Burnley wasn't leaving any space behind them. They were sitting right on the edge of their own penalty box.
Oh, so there was nowhere for Gyökeres to actually run into.
Precisely. Havertz, however, is this physical aerial target. Arteta recognized that trying to just pass through a wall of Burnley defenders wasn't going to work. He needed a player who could win a physical battle in the air, especially during a set piece.
So he essentially sacrifices speed for a battering ram on corner kicks.
Exactly. And, it paid off in the 37th minute. But we also have to examine how close that gamble came to completely destroying Arsenal's season in the second half.
Oh, man. Yeah, the 67th minute. Havertz makes this lunging, studs-up tackle from behind on Burnley's Leslie Ugochukwu.
It was nasty.
He completely catches the player's ankle, and the referee only gives him a yellow card.
Yeah, and the video assistant referee system, VAR, they didn't intervene to upgrade it to a red card.
How does that happen? A studs-up tackle from behind is a textbook sending-off offense. If he gets a red card there, Arsenal has to defend a super fragile 1-0 lead with 10 men for nearly half an hour.
It all comes down to the mechanics of how VAR actually operates. The system is instructed only to overturn a referee's on-field decision if there is a clear and obvious error.
Right, the clear and obvious threshold.
Exactly. So the VAR officials likely deem that, well, while the tackle was reckless, the force or the exact point of contact didn't cross that really high threshold to mandate overturning the yellow.
That is so subjective, though.
Highly subjective. And honestly, Havertz was incredibly fortunate.
That is literally the definition of razor-thin margins. But, they survive, they hold on through nearly 10 minutes of stoppage time. And Arteta is now 2 wins away from Arsenal's greatest season ever.
Especially considering they also have the Champions League final against Paris Saint-Germain looming on May 30.
Unbelievable. But the crazy thing is, their Premier League fate isn't even entirely up to them.
No, it is not. Arsenal is completely dependent on Manchester City dropping points in their Tuesday night game against Bournemouth.
And looking at Bournemouth's recent form, City is walking into an absolute buzzsaw.
Oh, without a doubt.
Bournemouth is riding a sensational 16-game unbeaten streak under their manager, Andoni Iraola. They just beat Fulham 1-0. Why is this specific team such a nightmare matchup for Manchester City right now?
It's all because of how Iraola sets up his team out of possession.
Mm-hmm.
Iraola demands this relentless, high-intensity pressing system.
So they aren't just sitting back like Burnley did.
Not at all. Instead of sitting deep, Bournemouth pushes their forwards and midfielders super high up the pitch to suffocate the opponent's defenders.
Wow.
Yeah, and think about Manchester City. They rely on intricate passing from the back to build their attacks. Bournemouth is designed to disrupt exactly that kind of rhythm.
So City has to go to the Vitality Stadium and break the league's longest unbeaten run just to keep the title race alive.
Exactly, but it gets even more complicated.
Right, because as if a relentless, pressing Bournemouth side wasn't enough to worry about, City is suddenly dealing with an absolute earthquake behind the scenes.
The biggest news of the year.
Pep Guardiola is stepping down. The news just broke that after the season finale against Aston Villa, he is just walking away from Manchester City.
Ending a 10-year reign. I mean, he has won 20 major trophies, including their FA Cup victory over Chelsea just this past Saturday.
Right, and secured an unprecedented 4 consecutive league titles. And he still has a year left on his contract.
It's stunning.
I honestly cannot get over the timing of this leak. It defies logic. You are in the middle of a title race, preparing for a must-win game against a team on a 16-game unbeaten streak, and the news drops that the architect of your entire dynasty is quitting.
It's a huge shock to the system.
Like, how does a squad maintain focus? I mean, think about it like this. It's like finding out your company's CEO is quitting the night before the biggest pitch of the decade. Gary Neville compared this to Sir Alex Ferguson leaving Manchester United or Kenny Dalglish leaving Liverpool.
It really is an existential shock to the club. But what's fascinating here is the actual mechanism of Manchester City's response.
How do you mean?
Well, when a generational figure leaves, the immediate risk is an institutional vacuum. The players start wondering about their own futures, the tactical identity phrase, and basically panic sets in.
Sure, human nature.
But City isn't scrambling. They are actively managing the psychology of the transition.
By immediately locking in a successor.
Exactly. City reportedly already has a verbal agreement in principle with Enzo Maresca on a contract through 2028 with an option for 2029.
But wait, Enzo Maresca, he's a pretty young manager. Why would you hand the keys of the most dominant team in the world to someone without decades of elite managerial experience?
Because City isn't looking for a new philosophy. They're looking to preserve the current one.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Maresca was Guardiola's assistant during City's treble-winning season. He inherently understands the really granular details of Pep's tactical blueprint.
Like the inverted fullbacks and all that.
Right, the inverted fullbacks, the use of false nines, the specific spatial rotations.
Yeah.
City isn't buying a new manager so much as they're promoting a highly trained technician to just keep Guardiola's machine running.
And at the same time, they are trying to harness the emotional weight of Pep's departure rather than letting it distract the team.
Right.
They are already in talks to rename the newly expanded North Stand after him, and there is an open-top bus parade scheduled for Monday in Manchester, regardless of whether they actually win the Premier League title or not.
Yeah, they are parading the FA Cup, the League Cup, and essentially giving the city a chance to parade Pep Guardiola one last time.
They are turning a potential distraction into a rallying cry for the squad to give their manager a legendary send-off.
That's exactly it. But, looking back at the choice of Enzo Maresca, it highlights a pretty stark contrast when you look at where Maresca was just a few months ago.
Oh, right. Maresca left Chelsea in January, and the absolute wreckage she left behind at Stamford Bridge has just consumed another manager, Liam Rosenior.
It's a disaster over there.
And the autopsy on his tenure is staggering. He lasted 106 days, just 23 games on a 6.5-year contract.
The underlying numbers of his final weeks are incredibly grim.
It ended with a 3-0 loss to Brighton on a Tuesday night. That capped off 5 consecutive Premier League defeats for Chelsea, where they didn't score a single goal.
0 goals in 5 games.
The last time Chelsea had a 5-game scoreless losing streak was 1912, literally the year the Titanic sank. I mean, how does a modern elite football club completely forget how to score a goal for 5 straight weeks?
Well, to understand that, you have to look at the structural environment in Chelsea. It wasn't just a failure of Rosenior's tactics on the pitch.
Okay, what was it then?
This was a total collapse of authority in the dressing room, fueled directly by the ownership model.
You mean the Blueco ownership consortium?
Yes. The American ownership group that bought Chelsea has implemented a highly unusual financial model.
Right.
They buy dozens of young players and put them on 7- or 8-year contracts to amortize the transfer costs over a really long period.
So it looks better on the balance sheet.
Exactly. But practically, that means the manager is dealing with a bloated squad of 30-plus players, all on massive long-term deals, and they are all demanding playing time.
So the manager has literally zero leverage. I mean, if a player is acting out, you can't just threaten to sell them because no one else is going to take on their massive 8-year contract.
Exactly. And Rosenior could not manage that volatile dynamic. After the Brighton game, he publicly called the players' attitudes unacceptable and indefensible, telling the press they needed to look in the mirror.
But wait, isn't a manager supposed to assert authority? Calling out underperforming players seems like pretty standard leadership to me.
It works if the players actually respect the hierarchy. But in this Chelsea squad, player power reigns supreme.
Ah, got it.
Rosenior specifically clashed with the Spanish-speaking contingent. And the real flashpoint was dropping the £106.7 million midfielder, Enzo Fernandez, for 2 games.
Why did he drop him?
Well, Fernandez gave a series of rebellious interviews questioning the team's direction.
So Rosenior tries to make an example out of the most expensive player in the squad.
And it backfired spectacularly.
Yeah.
Fernandez's price tag and his standing among the players gave him way more influence than a manager who had only been there for 3 months.
That is wild.
The dressing room fractured. The effort on the pitch just plummeted, resulting in those 5 scoreless defeats. The noise became deafening and the ownership had to act.
Making Rosenior the 5th permanent manager sacked under the Blueco ownership in just 4 years, which is insane. They install Callum McFarlane as an interim coach just to stop the bleeding.
Just a Band-Aid.
Right. But looking at the structural rot you just described, they need someone who can completely rip up the floorboards. Which brings us to Xabi Alonso.
The appointment that changed the entire trajectory of the club.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Xabi Alonso has signed a 4-year deal starting July 1st, 2026.
A massive hire.
Massive. This is a guy with undeniable pedigree. He won the World Cup as a player in 2010. He led Bayer Leverkusen to an historic, unbeaten Bundesliga title.
Incredible achievement.
And yes, he had a brief, turbulent stint at Real Madrid that ended in a January sacking, but he carries this aura of absolute command, like a strict elite headmaster taking over a chaotic school.
And he is weaponizing that aura right now. Alonso saw the bloated, chaotic mess that Rosenior inherited, and he basically refused to take the job unless Blueco agreed to change their foundational operating procedures.
Starting with the transfer policy, right?
Exactly. He demanded they abandon the strategy of exclusively stockpiling unproven youth prospects. He wants experienced, battle-tested players to anchor the squad.
No more kids running the classroom.
Yeah. But the tactical overhaul is what I really want to dig into.
Oh, definitely. Alonso is famous for a highly complex positional play system. The reports mention he uses a 3-2-2-3 formation or sometimes a 4-2-4 in possession.
Yeah.
For someone watching this from the stands or, a listener trying to visualize it, what does the 3-2-2-3 actually look like and why is it so effective?
Okay, imagine the field divided into a grid. Positional play is all about ensuring players occupy very specific zones to create numerical advantages.
Okay, makes sense.
In a 3-2-2-3, Alonso keeps 3 center backs deep, but then he takes his fullbacks, the players who usually defend the wide areas near the sidelines, and he tucks them inside to join the defensive midfielders.
Creating a cluster of 4 midfielders right in the center circle.
Exactly. It creates a box midfield.
Yeah.
You now have overwhelming numbers in the center of the pitch. You control the ball, you dictate the tempo, and You basically force the opposing team to squeeze their players centrally to deal with your numbers.
Wait, hold on. If I'm managing against Alonso and he pushes all his defenders and midfielders into the center of the pitch, doesn't that leave the wings completely exposed?
It does.
Why wouldn't I just launch a counterattack down the empty sidelines the second I win the ball back?
You would certainly try. But that brings us to Alonso's out-of-possession strategy, which is the aggressive mid-block counterpress.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Because Alonso has so many bodies clustered tightly together in the center, the second Chelsea loses the ball, those players immediately swarm the opponent.
Like a hive of bees.
Exactly. They suffocate the passing lanes before the opposing player can even lift their head to look for a winger.
So the density is both an attacking weapon and a defensive safety net.
Yes. But, and this is crucial, executing a system with that level of spatial discipline requires supreme football intelligence. You cannot have players breaking rank or freelancing.
Which is why Alonso is enforcing a brutal squad clearing.
Exactly.
He's demanding the final say on who stays and who goes. The reports mention defenders Tosin Adarabioyo, Mamadou Sarr, and Trevoh Chalobah, along with winger Mykhailo Mudryk, are all on the chopping block.
He's not messing around.
Not at all. He is cutting away the bloat to build a streamlined system around highly technical generational talents like Cole Palmer and the young Brazilian Estevan.
Players who actually have the technical capacity to receive the ball under immense pressure in those really tight interior pockets of space.
Yeah.
He is fundamentally replacing chaos with extreme structured control.
Wow. So what does this all mean? I mean, we've covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We have Arsenal enduring this tense, agonizing wait, hoping a ferocious Bournemouth pressing team can somehow derail Manchester City. We have the unbelievable end of Guardiola's decade of dominance, an exit that forces City to actively manage the psychology of their entire squad just to keep the machine running.
Right.
And then we have Chelsea hitting the reset button yet again, handing total structural authority to Xabi Alonso to tear down a toxic dressing room culture and build this highly complex positional system.
It is a remarkable convergence of narratives. You basically have one dynasty trying to secure its legacy and another club desperately trying to build one from the absolute ashes.
And for you listening, whether you are managing a team at work, running a business, or honestly just navigating a difficult project, the mechanics of these stories are incredibly revealing.
Absolutely.
They show us how quickly a structure can collapse when leadership loses its leverage, as we saw with Rosenior. They show us how vital it is to manage the psychology of a team during a massive transition, like City is doing with Pep. And they show us that sometimes fixing a problem requires demanding the authority to completely change the underlying rules of engagement, exactly like Alonso was doing at Chelsea.
You know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, looking at how Manchester City and Chelsea are operating right now, it raises a really profound question about the evolution of the sport itself.
Okay, where are you going with this?
Consider the contrast. City is hiring Enzo Maresca not to bring his own vision, but specifically to maintain and execute Pep Guardiola's exact tactical blueprint.
They are essentially buying continuity.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Chelsea is hiring Xabi Alonso and giving him unprecedented power to completely dismantle their scouting network, their dressing room hierarchy, and their tactical identity, all just to install his own highly specific 3-2-2-3 framework.
It really makes you wonder, are we witnessing the death of the traditional football manager?
I think we might be.
Because in the past, a manager was a motivator, right? A guy who picked the starting 11, gave a great speech, and rallied the troops. Now it feels like we are entering the dawn of the system architect.
That is exactly the shift. When these billionaire ownership groups hire a head coach today, they are no longer just hiring a leader. They are deciding which proprietary operating system to install into their billion-dollar franchise.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Are you running the Guardiola OS or the Alonso OS? Because the entire club, the youth academy, the transfer budget, the data analytic department, all of it must be reformatted to run that specific software.
It's literally like asking, are you installing iOS or Android at your football club?
Exactly.
Because if you install the wrong one, or, if you try to run complex software on incompatible hardware like Chelsea did with Rosenior, the whole system just crashes.
A total blue screen of death.
Exactly. It leaves you with a whole lot to chew on. And it reminds us that underneath the green grass of these stadiums, the tectonic plates are always shifting. Sometimes it's a really slow buildup of pressure, and sometimes the ground just opens up beneath you. Keep your eyes on the pitch, and we'll catch you next time.